musician.
With
Mike.
It's a pleasure to be here. You know, Tina, when you were singing, I felt grateful that I didn't understand the words because, as Jen was saying, that art speaks to us in a certain way that reaches beyond pragmatic and rational thought, that it's transrational. And when you were singing, I was thinking even that when Martin Luther translated the Bible, it was controversial because so many people wanted to understand what the words meant, but a lot of other people didn't want to understand, that they felt it took something away from it. And as Joseph Campbell talks about, even looking back at old scriptures from any religion, that if we think about it too much, it becomes a news report. You know? In other words, the myth is something that carries us beyond our rational and pragmatic thought. When Jen invited me to come down here last week, and I spent the afternoon with Katya really absorbing this spectacular show, and we were looking at a couple of these pieces that depict these men who are conspiring to sell off or plan the future of these children to go as soldiers, as you were singing about in the second song, or workers. And I was thinking about, it was really the commoditization of sentience and how wicked that is. And yet, we still choose to fall in love, regardless of the inevitability of the pain of life and of war. Human beings still decide to get together and fall in love and reproduce. Even at the most wicked times in history, we say, well, even the darkest time of war, my life is horrible, your life is horrible, my child's life is horrible, but let's reproduce again, right? And the way you tie the show in with this tree, the Yggdrasil, and the Norse cosmology of this tree that ties all the worlds together, I think really on a subtle level depicts that hope that regardless of any pain, regardless of the brutality of life, we look out into the cosmos and the nebula and the solar systems are so spectacular. I.e., in other words, there's something within us, this deep light that says, it goes on. In Martin Luther King's word, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It bends towards beauty. It bends towards grace. And despite the brutality of what it is to be human, particularly in a time of war and a time of confusion, there's something deep inside this spark that says to us, it's worth it. This pain, it's worth it. It's okay. I'm really captivated by your show. And you know, for me as a storyteller, in the same way, Tina, you're talking, the second song you sang, particularly, I was looking up through the skylight at one moment at the building next door at the different windows, and I thought, wow, I wonder what stories are happening through these windows that you might be singing about right now. In other words, it's really a story about the moon and the stars and the sun, and the story goes on. And you depict it so clearly here, the inevitability of pain, and yet there's something transrational beyond our capacity of knowing that says, we go forward no matter what. We have this capacity to choose intuitively and subtly in the gentle moments and the eye contact with one another to say, okay, let's not commoditize sentience. Yeah. Let's allow it to be beautiful. Yeah. And I was even thinking that when I was looking at one of your paintings in here, Katya, that if I flipped it upside down and I looked away for a second, I might say, oh, that's a bunch of people at a party, right? In other words, that when you look at it, the pain that it carries is so intense. Just like this juxtaposition between crying and laughing, that if you're crying so hard or you're laughing so hard, you really can't really tell the difference. And I think that's what you've articulated in the show. There's this sort of paradox between total liberation and this fine line of total devastation. And that we have to touch both of those things. That in some way, if you will, the salt makes the cake sweeter, right? It allows us to go forward. So it's a really honor to be here. with you, and with you, Jan, and Henry, and Katya, and to choose grace and use art as a mechanism to sort of speak to something, particularly now in a world that is becoming so confusing, that we have to close our eyes, if you will, to decide and figure out how do we find sort of true north. Henry, would you like to?
After all that, would you like to say something?
What you said.
Ditto.